So if you find yourself the culprit of violating someone's needs today, sometimes one of the best ways to communicate is to not. To just allow yourself to step in this space where you look at things from a different vantage point.
Makes sense.
So today's episode is a very, very small excerpt, yet powerful share from my full spectrum, what I call communication breakdown course. And that's going to be something that's launching inside what we call our Make Sense Academy. And that exists on the school platform. That's where we take all of this stuff and in a group format, just miraculous breakthroughs happening in there. But in a group format, we really seek clarity in our own selves, and really, really become masterful at communicating. And that's happening in the Make Sense Academy. And the course is going to be called Communication Breakdown, which, interestingly enough, when I say communication breakdown, how does that register with you? Does that mean the breakdown of communication or the breaking down of the elements of communication? So you can see that's kind of shedding light on where we're going to go today. Is that, what you see is what you get, but it's not always what is. So we're going to enter this space where we're going to look at alternate perspectives, which in a conversation is hugely important, where we can not just consider what we're thinking, what our intentions are, but also the other person's. And if you get that right, that's how you master communication. So remember, it's who you are that determines how well what you do works. And this episode is less about the do and more about the who. I've done it all. And whenever I learn some sort of a communication strategy, I've read all the books. I find that it's only when I'm my authentic self and I'm in the right headspace that I can execute. Because sometimes one of the best ways to communicate is to not. That communication rarely breaks down, the breaking down of it. It rarely breaks down because of words. So remember, who you are determines how well what you do works. So it's not typically the words that we use that break down communication. It breaks down because of some sort of interpersonal need that either you or I have, that's either being met, which is a good thing, or, as I say, unknowingly being violated or missed. So we're talking about needs here today. This is what I love to talk about. And if you can figure this out, and just in real time, I'm thinking about that right now, right? Which is very difficult. So that's why I love when people comment and they ask me questions and they give me feedback, because it's the only chance that I get outside of making a general assumption of an audience, what your needs are. That's a key insight, is that conversations need to be had and listening needs to be executed on, because we don't know. We don't know. And I love to go around with that open curiosity of not knowing and just try to figure it out through effective communications. So if you find yourself the culprit of violating someone's needs today, meaning not picking up on them and, stomping on them and somehow, I want you to know that you're forgiven, because you know not what you did or what you do. Call miscommunication is often just unrecognized needs colliding. Here's an interesting concept. Needs collision. Arguments are not always, two people just at odds with one another. They're a collision of needs, meaning they're not meshing, they're not aligned. So all you need is one person in a conversation to be open and curious and take note of the other person's needs, and you'll have a much better situation. So I'm going to float an idea into the room right now, and I'd love to know what you guys think about this. What if for a second we identified that every conversation that we ever have is broken down into two layers? So what are those two layers? First, there's the surface layer of the conversation. So that would be the words, the topic, and the story. So that's the first layer of it. But then there's that second hidden layer. See, this is why we have to practice active listening, and also why we miss and we have the collision of needs. So that second layer is a hidden layer, and that is what I refer to as the thing that your nervous system is trying to protect. Okay. So we all have these needs, and that's on that second layer that you don't expose in that first layer. Whenever I ask somebody what they want, that's an interesting question to ask somebody. Say, well, what do you want? Typically, you'll get that first layer, what I call surface want, right? They'll say something that's appropriate, but it's not really what they want. And it also doesn't share why. So that's how you move into the realm of needs. Just think about in conversations how rare it is that we actually go find that second layer. So we're all dopamine driven beings. Every one of us relies on certain internal needs to feel things like safety, grounded, and regulated. So when those needs are met, the nervous system stays calm and it feels safe. That's the key here, right? When those needs are met, the nervous system stays calm, flexible, and open. And that's self regulation in action right there. If I miss something about your needs, but I didn't intend to, I might recoil and try to justify and protect and explain my situation, but I still missed your needs. So let's try to bypass that problem and figure out a better way of communicating. Because when they're missed, even unintentionally, the nervous system shifts into that closed arm protective mode. So that protective response is often what we label as things like defensiveness. God, he's so defensive, that person. Have you ever been defensive? I sure have. Resistance, objections, and we even label people, or people label us, as difficult people. So I just want you to identify somebody that you label as a difficult person and entertain the idea that it's just somebody that you haven't figured out how to meet their needs. See, I believe that everybody's capable, they're just scattered. And that's why we, in our environment, we always seek clarity before action. But I believe that everybody is capable of having a wonderful breakthrough. That's what I mean by when I say you're capable. I don't believe in difficult people. I actually enjoy meeting difficult people. So my whole interface response system that you guys will get with through my book, it's a 4-step process to give you a healthy response, help you learn how to reframe and give you a healthy response. That's the difference between reacting, which is an automatic thing, and responding. So if you start to see these things, just remember, maybe there's a needs collision going on. So inside the communication breakdown course, I introduce a framework that puts this language, into play. Okay. And it's called PSR. So it identifies the 6 common needs that show up in all conversations. So I'm going to invite you right now to just kind of don't obsess about this, but you'll to some degree have all of these. It's kind of like a 5 languages of love thing here. So here's PSR. And these are the 6 common needs that show up in conversations. Figure out what yours is. And once you do, you can start playing around and figuring out what others are. So the first, for the P, it's power. Do I feel under control? Do I feel in control? Or do I feel cornered? So that would be somebody that has a need for power. So that's not necessarily a bad thing to have a need for power. But if somebody feels out of control, right, and cornered, and their need is power, it's a miss. It's a needs collision. The second one, the I, is intelligence. Do I feel understood and respected? That's a popular one, right? If you feel disrespected and misunderstood and your need is intelligence, you want to feel like somebody recognizes your intelligence, that's a miss. The third A is called acceptance. Do I feel safe being myself? One of the main reasons that I'm in a good marriage, and the reasons why a lot of people fail in relationships and business and just communication in general, is this acceptance thing is off, right? People don't feel comfortable. The fourth is S, significance. Do I feel like I matter here? I always say in the last 10 minutes of our lives, what will we really give a shit about? I think we're going to look back and wonder if we mattered, if we made our time count, if we mattered. So if somebody's seeking significance, right, and you're speaking to them and they don't feel like they matter because you're talking over them, that's a miss. That's a big miss. So if you can figure these things out, man, you can just completely escalate your communication. So the fifth one, approval, is, do I feel validated or okay with them? Think about how it feels when you're speaking to someone and you feel like they have a problem with you. Or it's kind of like being misunderstood, but are we okay? Are we okay? Not everybody's brave enough to say that. So approval is a big, big one. And then the last one, relief. A lot of people today have this one. If their need is relief, that's the person that's thinking and questioning themselves, do I feel pressure or a sense of release from it? A lot of people don't want to have to do anything, right? I mean, this is a very popular one in this day and age. So if you're overwhelming somebody with responsibility and things like that, and all they want to do is learn a little bit, right? And not necessarily feel compelled to do something about it. One of the biggest stimulants of anxiety is responsibility. So you don't need to memorize these things right now. What matters is this: when you don't recognize which need is active in you and the other person, right? Yours or theirs, you end up fighting the symptom instead of addressing the cause. Pause on that for a second. Think about any argument that you have with your spouse or your friend or somebody at work. Can you see that that argument is not based on the cause as much as the symptom? Somebody said something that hurt you or anything. So the whole concept of the interface response system in light of this is to just allow yourself to step in this space where you look at things from a different vantage point, a different vantage point. One of the most important things that a human being could do to enrich and have a better life experience is to entertain alternative perspectives. Here's one. This idea of missing it, this is where stress escalates, boundaries get crossed, and even good intentions collapse. So just because you have good intentions, that's not a foundation for you to stand and protect yourself. I'm sure you had good intentions, right? But you missed something in those good intentions. So you can either decide, there's another choice point. There's a decision to say, do I want to listen more and ask more questions and practice active listenings, or fuck them, take it. This is how I am, take it or leave it. When you do recognize the need, a mindset shift happens, conversations slow down, pressure drops, mental clarity returns. Doesn't that sound nice? So let's make this practical. Think about the last time that someone pushed back on you. I mean, you all have this. I'm pretty certain you all have this. When's the last time somebody pushed back on you? Feel free to share it if you like to. Did they push back because they disagreed with you, or in light of this conversation, now we can entertain this, or maybe they felt rushed, misunderstood, unseen, judged, or pressured? See, our knee-jerk reflex is that they pushed back because they just disagree with you and they're not like you. We're all more alike than not. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's just kind of where I stand right now. If somebody feels misunderstood, unseen, judged, or pressured because we miss their needs, you can see how those words correlate with PSR. Reach out. You can imagine how they would, pull back from you. So those reactions aren't flaws that people have, by the way. They're just signals that we can start identifying. We're all very similar, but we're unique because of our life experience. So if you can start to identify some of these things, they're not flaws. They're just unique characteristics that give us a signal of how to better communicate with people. If you want to have a great relationship with someone, and this is the 5 languages of love concept as well, and you give a shit about them, well, you'll take the time, and if you're in business and you want to increase your sales and things like that, you will take the time to become a better communicator. I want to talk a little bit about business here for a second. If you're in leadership, coaching, sales, presenting, or relationships, which is a lot of you, and some of you are writers and authors and things like that, you're in the business of influence. Now, you might not think so because you might attach the word influence to something. But what I'm saying is in some way, shape, or form, you're involved with influence. So influence without understanding turns into pressure. But influence with awareness becomes service rather than sales. And what's the difference between service and sales? If I'm in service, I'll say something to you like, how can I help you? If I'm in sales, I'll say, here's how I can help you. When you meet someone's needs first, objections soften naturally. And when people feel safe, seen, and understood, resistance dissolves. The resistance that we feel in relationships and conversations dissolves when people feel understood and seen. And you know, the two most powerful words you can hear in a conversation from somebody, and this is from Chris Voss in Never Split the Difference, great book, FBI investigator. Uh, he says that the two words you want to hear in a conversation is somebody says, that's right. When somebody says that's right, what are they saying? They're going, you get me. You get me. That means you did a good job. You did a good job. And once again, if you don't care about doing a good job and you don't care, you're just going to, cognitive bias is like, it's my party. I'll cry if I want to. And I just want to find other people like that as well. So if you are like that right now, this is a waste of your time, this conversation. But if you're looking to master your communication for many, many reasons, for your own good, and also to improve a lot of the things you're working on, this is powerful shit right here. So that's real communication mastery, and it's foundational for burnout prevention. It's exhausting, by the way, to argue with everybody and always feel misunderstood. You'll just stop talking to people. Instead of asking, and we're just gonna have some closing thoughts here. Instead of asking yourself or people today, how do I say this better? That's what everybody asks me when I'm in coaching mode. They say, how could I say this better, or what could I say? Try asking instead, what might this person's nervous system be protecting right now? I know that sounds a little nerdy, but if you ask that question, because whether you think it's cool or not, they have a nervous system. If I say, which means I'm going to think about it, I haven't made my mind up yet. What might this person's nervous system be protecting right now? That single question right there supports emotional resilience, inner peace, and better outcomes in everyday life right there. If you have a perspective and it seems like people are not entertaining that perspective, and we go back to PSR, right? You don't feel understood. You don't feel, you're not getting approval, right? So your needs are not being met. So here's an interesting thing that you can load. If you have a different opinion or perspective than somebody, why do you feel compelled to explain how yours is better than theirs? Everybody's allowed to have a perspective. It might not be in alignment with you, but if you want to be a masterful communicator for whatever reason you decide, I think it's important for you to acknowledge somebody's perspective. Interesting. And one of the things that you can do if you're the kind of person that is afraid that they'll think that you're like them because you're not, all you have to do is just take your finger and just say, noted, I get it. I can see your perspective. So you don't have to have and share perspective, right? You can share theirs. But what you'll notice is that if you share your perspective and somebody shuts it down and tries to overpower it with their perspective, well, that's a miss. That's a miss. So instead of asking, how can I say this better? Try asking, what might this person's nervous system be protecting right now? And that single question supports emotional resilience, inner peace, and better outcomes in your everyday life. And in closing, if this resonates with you, because remember, this is the jacuzzi experience. You hopefully picked up a couple of things today. These are things that are not meant to just stay. They're meant to be put in play. You know what I'm saying? So that's why at the end of my podcast episodes, I always say, if you learn something today, give it away. That's the only way it's going to stay. What that's indicating is put this stuff into play, share it with others, but actually go out there and see what happens. And the easiest way to do that is to just allow yourself to not be in a rush. So, remember, You don't have to respond right away. You can ask questions like the nervous system question. So if this resonates with you, I break this down in much more depth in like an 8-part communication mastery course. If anybody takes that course and actually practices it that year, they will become masterful communicators. That could equate to better relationships, sales, all of that stuff. So if you want to come check that out, that's in the Make Sense Academy. There's a free trial. It's costs less per month than you pay for food today. So it's not a lot of money. I want to make it accessible for everybody, but that's where the actionable steps and the daily habits are going to turn that awareness of this stuff, the jacuzzi experience, into real world change for you and those that you wish to serve in life. So that's it today. Makes sense? Love and appreciate you all. And I'll say it again. Remember, learning and knowing in the absence of action is nothing but a distraction. So take this right now, whatever it was, even just one thing, give it away, put it into play. That's the only way it's going to stay. Love and appreciate you. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.
Makes sense.